I'm going through Wikipedia stuff, articles today on a couple of topics that I've been using, or phrases that I've been using over the last 2-3 years. And one of them is, we are living in the culture of death. Like Gandhi said, civilization would be a good idea. We haven't really come across civilization as yet. So I'm doing a little research, and it turns out this phrase, I mean, it goes back, the culture of death, this concept goes back thousands of years, I think. But the most recent reviving of this concept, the culture of death, which is being used by different people. I use the culture of death as it relates to art. I see it in art, representations of a kind of, what is it? A nihilism, a self-destructive nihilism. But it was John Paul II, the Pope with a slur like this. He ended up like this. He stands in the window and they had to prop him up, which is curious. Why did Benedict resign? He wasn't sick. He wasn't anything. These popes last forever. They die no matter in what state. John Paul was decrepit. He had Alzheimer's. He had Parkinson's. Whatever he had, he didn't have a rational thought in his mind. And he did what is called Evangelium Vitae, the gospel of life, and he referred to the culture of death. And now there are articles, there's so much material on this that you can research. Anyway, I'm just going to give you my synopsis, how I look at this stuff, and my videos are basically for people of conscience. I'm trying to engender this sense of conscience. I try to make work that is literally on the edge of this conscience and consciousness. I'm trying, like all other artists, great artists that I admire, that inspire me to push myself to the edge of that thinking, feeling, connecting. So, the idea of the culture of death. John Paul II tried to hijack this concept. Isn't this beautiful? Now these, as Michael Fazio, who by the way has blocked me because there was some, whatever it was, came up with a great term. These are sissies in dresses. I love that. Sissies in dresses are preaching to me, are preaching to you about the culture of death. And here are these avowed pedophiles, and I would put the depravity within this organization, the Roman Catholic Church, based on the power that is the Vatican in Rome, a city all onto its own, that has survived all wars. Nobody goes after these guys. They are avowed pedophiles and declared, hiding the fact that this depravity will not be exposed to public scrutiny. It's in family. These culprits are given a second, third, fourth, fifth life. They're shifted from diocese to diocese. They have made declarations. This Pope now, this Bergoglio, this Pope Francis, has made a declaration that prohibits anyone in his administration to reveal who these depraved individuals, these criminals are. Now they're giving us lectures on what it is that is the culture of death. They are the seat. They are the pinnacle of what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking as with an intent to be offensive to anyone from the point of view of saying, well, this religion is better than another. They're all the same. It's just that this outfit, and me having been brought up as a Roman Catholic, I had to suffer through that upbringing, through these church doctrines, and I'm going to read you just from the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. They love to expound on all this stuff. These were they have this organization within this the doctrine of the faith, the protectors of the doctrine of the faith, or whatever they call themselves. of the faithful. Benedict was the head guy in this. He was running the modern day Inquisition. He made sure that anybody with a voice of conscience was nailed to the cross again. So I'm just going to read you. What these people tell us is the culture of death. And as I read this, it applies perfectly to them. This is exactly what they are. And they're spouting to us, to you and me. There is no self-reflection. And this is the nature of being us. Number one, we have the ability to bear frustration, which means that if you reflect upon yourself and you don't like something, you just don't throw it out and flail about and say, oh no, it's not me, it's not me. No, you look at yourself, because we have the ability to bear the frustration, to look at that which we need to look at in order to change and better ourselves. Now, these pedophiles, these sissies and dresses, are telling you and me the culture of death. And I'll tell you what the culture of death is after I read this. These proclivities lead to the destruction of life. And the proclivities are going to be listed underneath. They devalue human life, leading to an explosion of all types of sins. We're going to get their main sins now. When we do not value human life, all the right mantras, we do not value people. This leads us to sin by harming ourselves. Forget about harm. You go ahead and harm yourselves. It's the others that you shouldn't be harming, and others. Since we do not see the face of God, the face of God, the God that they have created in all of history. I've showed you the image of God, that they have created in history. Look at this guy, blue-eyed guy, a guy with blue eyes and a beard. That's their God. And we don't see the face of God in our neighbor, which is, of course, true. This selfishness, this complete and total selfishness. I'm going to go into a rant on this because, obviously, I'm upset by these hypocrites. And anyway. Here's what the Didacte says. That, I think, means the declaration by this John Paul II thing. The way of death, meaning what is the path to death, and this culture of death that he refers to, that I picked up. I didn't read this. It came to me. This is something. Yes, it's out there, and we influence each other. I never heard this from anybody. I just termed it the culture of death. I have my own concept of it, and the way of death is this. Get ready, people. Get ready, people. First of all, it's evil and full of curses, murders, adulteries, lust, fornication, theft, idolatry, magic arts, witchcraft, rapines, false witnessing, lying, hypocrisies, double-heartedness, deceit, haughtiness, depravity, self-will, greediness, filthy talking, jealousy, overconfidence, loftiness, boastfulness, persecutors of the good, hating truth, loving a lie, not knowing a reward for righteousness, not cleaving to good, nor to righteous judgment, watching not for that which is good, but for that which is evil, from whom meekness and endurance are far, loving vanities, pursuing requital. Now it gets a little more stupid. So, whatever I'm reading, let me finish it. Not pitying a poor man, not laboring for the afflicted, not knowing him that made them, murderers of children, destroyers of the handiwork of God, turning away from him that is wanting, afflicting him that is distressed, advocates of the rich, lawless judges of the poor, utter sinners. Be delivered, children, from all of these. Okay, be delivered, children, by those that are exactly proponents of what it is that they're telling us not to be. so that they can be exactly that. Because ultimately, when you rape children, when you murder children, which is happening under the auspices of these religions, the Anglicans, the Roman Catholics, the residential schools here in Canada, the Aboriginals in Australia, the genocide of the Indian nations, of the American continent. These are the people. These are the people telling you and me we shouldn't do that. But then they go ahead and do it. Okay, now I'll just come back. I'll come back to this dissertation on the culture of death, the deviancy. We are being misled continuously away from our own recognition, understanding what this is, which is why I focused a lot of my comments in relation to my art, my work, other artists' work, that are we producing the work that endorses this culture of death? And I'm going to simplify this now very, very, very succinctly. What is the culture of death? And it's none of this stuff. Yes, of course, it's all of that stuff, but it's none of that stuff. And what it is, in a nutshell, and I've said this, in a nutshell, number one is conformity. And number two is complicity. Those two things, if we can get rid of that, it's going to be a paradise. We're going to resolve, and this is a faith I have in humanity, because conformity allows us or drives us like a cattle herd to the slaughter through the narrow gates of their dogma. The conformity, because every individual has within them, I believe this to be 100% true, no matter how criminal and depraved a person might be. Within each person, there is this wherever this comes from, it's part of the mystery. It gives us, we have a power in ourselves to do the right thing, which is to care. What I've always said, to care. And these guys will derail us. They list the debaucheries. They list the whole stuff. And of course, they have their own conception. They have what is called an agenda. They'll always take it into the right to life and abortion, and they have their population concepts, and they have all these Agenda 21 shit going on in the background while they're telling us these self-righteous sermons. So my point is, those are the two things, people. Conformity and complicity is sinking the ship. Nuclearism is a result of conformity. We have allowed this devious cartel to run with this ball. And as far as John Paul II, the saint, he's going to be a saint. He was going around doing this to everybody. He's going to be a saint now. Well, if you were in his presence, you're going to go to heaven most likely because he did this to you. How the hell does that work? Some guy says, I forgive you the sins. Yeah. What? The divine right of kings. I have a direct line to the omnipotent being, and there you go. And I'll tell you now where this deviation comes from. And I'm going to refer now to a biblical story that John Paul, to do his Evangelium Vitae, fixated on, which was the murder of Abel by a character called Cain in Genesis, in the very beginning, very early on. And now I'll give you my version of the culture of death, how this is propagated, how this is instilled within us, the culture of death. Because I use this all the time, I feel I have to articulate what it is that we're facing when we're being told by the hypocrites what this culture of death is. It had nothing to do what they're saying with the culture of death. That is just the consequence, the result. The behaviors are a consequence and a result of a psychological part of us that has been fundamentally destroyed by art. Art, and the art of interpretation. This is very important. If you look at literature, biblical scriptures as literature, scriptures as art, in the sense that we take the metaphor that comes from this. There was no guy Abel and Cain running around on the planet in prehistoric times. Well, some religions say it's only 6,000 years ago with the dinosaurs and all that. So anyway, there was no Cain and Abel people. These are archetypes, as Jung said. These are psychological parts within ourselves. And if we allow people to enter our sanctum, our sanctuary, and try, and what they do is they shake it up. And once they've shaken it up enough, Blanche had a little thing yesterday. He said, Mark Twain said, if you shake a map, everything, and you turn it upside down, everything lands in San Francisco. Well, what they're doing is they're shaking us up psychologically, emotionally, and submitting us to their explanation, which is a lie, which is totally, utterly flawed. And I'll tell you how. I'll give you the explanation, the definitive explanation of the Cain and Abel story. And you can research this in the Bible. And John Paul said, well, the reason we have death and mayhem is because the original event of all of this was Cain killing Abel. So it's a continuation of this big mistake we made. We made a big mistake. Well, yeah, of course it's a big mistake to start going around killing people. But here's the story. If you read in the Bible, I'll be very simple here. You go into this and it'll say, Adam and Eve had a son. And that son was called Abel. This is in scriptures. Read it. Adam and Eve had a son. Oh, a guy who actually... what did he have? He killed sheep. He was the sheep herder, and he sacrificed sheep to the Lord. The next individual that appears, Eve, goes to Adam and says, I have begotten a son from the Lord. Check it out. The birth of Cain is Eve telling Adam, I have begotten a son from the Lord. So this is not a union of Eve and Adam. This is a union of Eve and the Lord. Now, remember, these are not fairy tales in the way that you read them. These are symbols. These are metaphors. So this being, Cain, what Cain represents, has a direct connection with what you and I and in our consciousness we consider the Lord, God. Omnipotent being, in exaltedness, like inspiration, it's creativity, it's whatever you want to call it, that's magnificent. They sacrifice, their sacrifice, and supposedly, the way it's interpreted, Abel's sheep is burning like the dickens and must smell like crap, and Cain's vegetable sacrifice is like brooding. It's like smoking dark smoke. It would have been the other way around. You burn an animal and it's like brutal. It's like horrible. It's like it stinks, the fur and everything. And his vegetables supposedly didn't really burn that well. So what is my conclusion? How do I understand this? Number one, if Cain is a descendant of the Almighty, the exalted being, this omnipotent being, why would he actually perform some ritual of genuflection? Why would he do this ritual of adoration to someone that he is himself? It makes no sense. Which is why, in this story, the smoke doesn't rise to the exalted being, because Cain has no need to exalt this being, because he is that being, and he's you, he's I. When we understand this, we don't have to go through this bullshit ritual of exaltation of ourselves. It doesn't work. Whereas this character Abel, a bag of blood, Abel, a bag of blood, a sheep herder guy who kills animals. Yeah, okay, so he's doing his sacrifice, it's working well. However, and here's where the interpretation breaks down. And it's very subtle, because there is intuition in all of this as well. If I'm saying that the Bible tells me that Cain was begotten of the Lord, and Abel is a product of Adam and Eve, the incredible awareness of this in this character Abel would basically just blow him up. He would be so overwhelmed by the presence of this Cain character. There is no knife being thrust into anybody to kill anybody. It's an awareness. It's the death in ourselves. We need to let Abel die in ourselves. This is the story of Cain, because Cain supposedly in this story has killed, and the Lord comes and says, "Oh, you naughty boy, what am I going to do with you?" And Cain says, "Well, am I my brother's keeper?" Well, another stupid line, "Am I my brother's keeper?" What it means is like, look, I know you exist in this mystery. I understand. Buddy didn't get it and was totally blown up by the concept that he had no way of connecting with you the way I do. He disappeared. And the Lord says, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send you east of Eden into the land of Nod. And the land of Nod, translated, is a land of all possible possibilities. It's a place where I want to be. I want to be in the land of all possible possibilities. This is where Cain ends up. Not only that, but the Almighty Being, the omnipotent being, warns anybody that is going to lift a finger against Cain. He will bring destruction and mayhem sevenfold on anyone that touches a hair on Cain. Now, why the hell would he say that? He, by the way, it's still a he. This Lord character is quite a philanderer in the Bible. Vicious son of a bitch too. So, biblically speaking, there is no precedent to the culture of death is rooted in a complete and total fabrication, a misrepresentation. And they continue to hold on to the right to tell you and me what it means to be part of a culture of death. And the culture of death is rooted in the misunderstanding that we have of the mystery that is us. We are contained in this mystery. And we function within this on a very peripheral level, the way we're practicing it now, because we believe people like these religious types to, what is it? Greedy, filthy, talking, jealous, overconfidence, loftiness, hypocrisy, witchcraft, rape, child murder. Yes, of course. But it's not because this is not the culture of death. They are the culture of death. We are the enlightened ones, and we have given them the right to take over our psyches with these false assertions, with these assumptions, with these undermining assumptions. This is getting really long. Maybe I have to do this again because I get worked up. The culture of death. I couldn't believe when I was researching that John Paul, the vote with a thing like this. No disrespect to people that have MS or anything, but this individual was so destructive to our nature, to our psyche, to our being. The propagation of the culture of death comes out of this Vatican bunch. So, okay. Culture of death. I want to go into the age of vision. It's going to be my next one. I'm going to have to look at this if it isn't too long or what. But here you go. I just wanted to. I've been using this term, and I feel it's been stolen from me, even though he came up first in 1995. Evangelium Vitae. It's like all right. So he was saying it. But it's not the culture of death that I'm talking about. It's not the culture of death at all. It has to do with recognizing the power within ourselves. Number one, we can bear the frustration. We can do it. We can do it. We need to be able to do it. People confront this every single day and come up with excuses not to bear that level of frustration. We can do it. And the next thing is not to become complicit and conformist. When we can't bear this, when it becomes too strong in us, we want to break out, and what we do instead would be we conform and we become complicit, and that is the culture of death.